So, equipment. Now, I don't want you to go out and spend loads of money on lots of things. You can improvise, you can be resourceful, but here's a few of the basic things that I tend to use, and I'll try and give you some alternatives of recycled type things as well. So the first thing we will be doing is seed sowing, and I tend to use a variety of things. I either use, these are kind of like supermarket fruit casing things, and they have drainage holes on the bottom which are really, really useful, so I use that. I've also started using, I have these kind of like recycled cardboard things that fruit also comes in with my fruit and veg box, so I keep those and I use those. These probably you'll only get one use out of these, but then they can be thrown on the compost heap, so they are useful. Also, another good thing is these little takeaway boxes. So for seed sowing and getting them to germinate, I do use these because they have a little lid, so it's like a little mini greenhouse, which is really useful. The only slight downside is that they haven't got drainage holes, but I think if we put paper towel in the bottom, I'm going to try that this year, and that just could provide a little bit of somewhere for the water to go so it doesn't drown your seedlings. We can talk about that another time. So different things for seed germination. You'll also need to improvise or get hold of plant labels. So I do have some plastic ones here, which obviously you can use year after year. I'm also got these lollipop stick type things, which obviously they can just stay in the ground, they'll biodegrade. These aren't so great at keeping the names on them, so that could be a bit of an issue. I've got hundreds of these though, so because I'm not really that keen on using plastic, and these do actually break after a year or two. They're not that robust. And then obviously a Sharpie. Now I do suggest you don't use coloured ones, so use a black one, so a permanent marker. Coloured ones the ultraviolet seems to affect them, and they fade and you can't see what the writing is. So sweet peas and some things, when we transplant them, like to have root trainers, something nice and long like this. Now you can get ones from the garden centre, which I've got some which I've already planted into, and they kind of unfold and fold up. These can be a little bit tricky to get things out of, and probably quite tricky to get in small numbers, but something along these lines. Or if you wanted to do a DIY version, is start collecting the insides of your toilet rolls or your paper towel holders, and then you can plant your sweet peas into them, and then the whole lot can then be put into the ground, because obviously this is just going to break down and the roots can go through it. So that's a really good alternative, and you're not going to be doing hundreds, so that's a pretty good way of getting around your root trainer issue. What else have we got here? So these mushroom crates are really quite useful for moving things around, carrying things around. So when it's possible to go to your fruit and veg shop next, usually they're quite keen just to give them away because they tend to skip them otherwise. So, and you may already have some anyway. So these are really quite handy. So if you can get hold of some of those. So once the seeds are germinated, we then think about putting them into their modules. So from the garden centre or online, you can get various things. Wilko is pretty good as well for gardening type products. So they usually come in packs. So you have some sort of a gravel tray at the bottom. Now I'm careful to call it a gravel tray rather than a seed tray. So this has not got holes in it. And I'll be putting some capillary matting in there. I'll show you what that is in a minute. So it's just to hold a little bit of water, and then you have these inserts come in different sizes. So these are 15, that works quite well. I've got another one over here which has got 24 in it, so same idea. And they come in whole trays like this. The only reason I've got these like this is that these aren't very robust. You tend to get what you pay for. So the cheaper the product, the weaker it is, and so you know, you're not going to get so many years out of this as to some other things that have got really quite decent inserts which cost more, but at least you can use them for years and years and years and years. These aren't great. Same with the seed trays. You'll get what you pay for. So don't need to get these straight away, but you will find this useful because it's space saving. You can get obviously a load in here as opposed to, you know, 24 different pots is going to take up a lot of space. So 15s is a pretty good number, I would suggest. So if you can find those, that is a good tip. So just be careful with a gravel tray that you don't accidentally get ones with holes in them. So these are good seed trays if you were going to do a germination of a lot of things. So I don't know, lettuce or something like that. It can be quite useful just to do it in one big tray instead of doing it in sort of littler amounts. And then you do need some drainage holes. But I've accidentally got trays like this thinking they were gravel trays without holes in, so they'd hold the water, and then found they've got the holes in, which can be a bit annoying because I don't tend to use these a lot. Okay, and the other thing, so quite often with your inserts you get like a little propagator, so it's just a little lid that goes on here. So again, it just acts like a mini greenhouse, and they can be quite useful when you're getting your seedlings going. But again, you can use other things. If you can save like clear plastic bags or something, that can do the same thing. So you don't have to get these, you know, but it's quite useful to have one or two. Here's just a bigger gravel tray, so I can get a couple. So I wouldn't necessarily put a tray within a tray, but just to give you an idea, if I didn't, I could just put the modules. I could get a couple in there, and that can be quite useful. So, but you know, they are more expensive. Obviously I've got quite a lot of these, so, but you do need something just to hold the water in, otherwise when you water things it'll just disappear. Talking about quality again, so this is this is like a cheaper version of your gravel tray, and you can see it's quite bendy as opposed to these ones which are really quite rigid. So you know, these are going to last me 20 years. This I might get 2 or 3, 4 years, but they, you know, they tend to just break a little bit easier. Right, so capillary matting, again, not essential at all. So you can get them in little inserts like this from Wilko, which is quite good. And the idea is, so you put them in the base of your gravel trays, which means that this will stay quite damp. So so it encourages the roots to go down, and it gives them enough moisture without drowning them. It's quite easy to overwater, and then the roots will start rotting, which isn't a very good idea for the plants. So these again can be quite useful. Now I think I have bought a bulk lot of this, so I'm sure we can work something out if you wanted a little strip and then cut it into bits like this. Somebody last year experimented with using like woolen jumpers from the charity shop. This is another version of capillary matting. So I've used this for a couple of years. You can see it's kind of looking a bit green, but it's just recycled fibres, and it's just enough to pop. I think I cut that to put in a bigger tray, and it just means it absorbs the water. And when this has got dried out, then I know I need to put a bit more water in, and it's a little bit easier to manage. So that can be quite useful as well. And then the other thing I'm going to give you in your starter packs is I've got a little bit of perlite here, which is really good for mixing in with your compost. I'll talk about compost in a moment. It just opens up the structure of the compost. It means that it improves the drainage a bit. It's quite easy to overwater, as I said. So a little bit of perlite could be useful. Again, it's one of those things that it's probably just, it's quite expensive to buy it in small quantities. So I tend to buy it in a great big bag, and it's way cheaper in the long run to do that. But obviously I'm using much bigger quantities. And then the other product is vermiculite. This would do the same job, but this is quite useful just to pop on the top of your, when you've just started sowing your seeds in those little pots, and I'll be showing you that when I do that demonstration. So in your starter kit, I'll be giving you a little bit of this as well. None of these things are essential. I didn't use them for years. So I've only really started using these in the last couple of years, but the vermiculite is much lighter, so it's quite useful just to put on the top of the soil. It stops the top of the soil drying out, so your seeds don't dry out. So I do find it quite useful. And then the last thing is the compost. So for seed sowing, actually the seeds don't need a very high quality compost, but I use the same for everything. It's a multi-purpose compost. I do use peat free, but that's just a personal choice. And the garden centres quite often do good deals on compost. I don't know, 3 bags for 12 quid or something along those lines. So if you can get hold of some compost, 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags, whatever kind of works for you, and then we'll open up the structure and make it go a little bit further by using a little perlite. But yeah, you definitely need to get hold of some compost. So you've got that up your sleeve. Okay, I think that's the main thing. The other thing I was just going to briefly mention actually is I tend to use little square pots if I want a pot on again from the modules, which sometimes I do, or if I've been taking cuttings. I prefer to use square pots because if you've got limited space, they all fit together a little bit better, whereas if you have lots of round ones, you're kind of wasting space and they somehow don't seem quite so stable. Again, a personal choice. You're probably more likely to have round pots if you save them, which I do. I tend to hoard lots of things, and I do find that round pots useful for putting things into, to give people give things away, that kind of thing. But as a rule of thumb, I try and buy the square pots, and don't usually have them much bigger than this apart from for dahlias or something. That's another story. Okay, so that's just some bits of basic equipment that it's worth trying to hoard or keep an eye out for when you're out, you're at the supermarket or the garden centre when the shops start opening again. Hope that's helpful.